Elvis Presley. You know the name, you know the look, you definitely know the voice. But what if I told you that behind the icon is a story of incredible genius, just shocking exploitation, and a medical tragedy that very few people really understand? Let's get into the real story behind the king.
You know, we have to start right here, with this quote from John Lennon. It just perfectly captures the sheer scale of Elvis's impact. He wasn't just some other singer, right? He was like the cultural Big Bang, the explosion that really created the musical universe we're all still living in today.
So how on earth did this happen? Well, it all started in the American South, where this one young man was soaking up a cocktail of sounds that, turns out, nobody had ever thought to mix together before.
This timeline really shows you the journey. He's born in Tupelo, Mississippi, and he's just steeped in the fire and soul of gospel music. Then his family moves to Memphis, and that was everything. It put him right at the crossroads of blues from Beale Street and country from the city outskirts. By the time he nervously walked into Sun Records, his musical DNA was pretty much already complete.
This is basically the formula. This is the recipe. From gospel, he takes that raw emotional power in his voice, that church choir feeling. From the blues and R&B he was hearing on the radio, he grabs that driving rhythm, the very structure of the songs. And from country, he pulls in the instruments and that kind of honky-tonk swagger. He stitched it all together and created something brand new.
And the result? Whoa, it was an absolute explosion. This new sound, and you have to remember his performance style, which was just so uninhibited. It didn't just sell records, it completely terrified the establishment. Sociologists actually have a term for this, a moral panic. Parents, teachers, preachers, they were outraged. They saw him as a genuine threat to the entire social order.
But as his fame just skyrocketed, the walls started closing in. This next part of his life, it's all about how an icon was built, yeah, but also how a man got trapped inside what was basically a gilded cage.
So picture this. At the absolute peak of his rebellious fame, he gets drafted into the army. His manager, the, let's say, infamous Colonel Tom Parker, sees a massive opportunity. Instead of getting Elvis a cushy entertainment gig, he has him serve as a regular soldier. It was a genius PR move. It totally transformed him from this dangerous rebel into an all-American hero, practically overnight.
But here's the thing. Behind the scenes, it was a total catastrophe. While he was stationed in Germany, his beloved mother, Gladys, passed away. And dealing with that immense grief, plus the pressures of being a soldier, he was introduced to stimulants to stay awake and barbiturates to sleep. So, in a devastating twist of irony, the moment of his greatest public relations win was also the exact moment his lifelong fatal dependency began.
And right at the center of this gilded cage was Colonel Parker. Just how controlling was he? Get this, at times he took an astounding 50% of everything Elvis earned. 50%! That is an absolutely insane fee for any manager back then or right now.
And this leads to the central paradox of his entire career. He was, without a doubt, one of the most famous people on the entire planet, yet he never once performed for his fans outside of the United States, not once. So why? Well, it's because Colonel Parker wasn't a U.S. citizen and reportedly lived in fear of being denied re-entry if he ever left, so Elvis's global career was sacrificed for his manager's own personal issues.
But if you think that's bad, this might just be the most shocking number of them all. In 1973, Parker sold Elvis's entire back catalog. We're talking all those groundbreaking hits from the 50s and 60s for just $5.4 million. And in doing so, he gave up all future royalties. Forever. Just a catastrophically short-sighted deal.
All of this, the pressure, the drugs, the control, it all builds to his final years. And the popular story we all know, the one about simple rock and roll excess, well, the medical reality is so much more complex. And honestly, so much more tragic.
So what really happened to Elvis? Was it simply a case of, too many cheeseburgers and too many pills? Because that's the story that we've all been told for decades.
But that story, it's incomplete. It misses the key clinical diagnosis that very likely locked him into a downward spiral that he just could not escape.
Okay, so take a look at this table. You can see his body was fighting a war on multiple fronts. Genetic issues, major cardiovascular disease, terrible gastrointestinal problems. But I want you to look very closely at that first line. Traumatic brain injury. Medical records indicate Elvis suffered from TBI, probably from multiple head traumas over the years, which was then made worse every single time an overdose starved his brain of oxygen. And this is absolutely crucial to understanding him. A traumatic brain injury can severely damage a person's judgment and their impulse control. So his inability to stop taking the drugs or change his diet wasn't just a simple failure of willpower. It was very likely a clinical symptom of actual brain damage. The injury fueled the behavior, and the behavior made the injury worse. It was a perfect, deadly trap.
But even after his tragic death, the story doesn't end there, not even close. In a lot of ways, that's when the true power and the immense value of the Elvis Presley icon was finally unleashed. To this day, he is still the best-selling solo music artist of all time, with sales easily clearing 400 million records. I mean, his commercial power hasn't faded one bit. And the heart of his entire legacy is Graceland. It's not just some tourist trap. It's a pilgrimage site. The only home in the entire United States that gets more visitors is the White House. Just think about that. It's been open to the public now for longer than Elvis was even alive.
Now remember this number, the tiny sum Colonel Parker got for Elvis's entire musical life's work, $5.4 million.
Okay, now compare that to this number, 600,000. That's about how many people visit Graceland every single year, proving the immense, long-term value that Colonel Parker totally failed to grasp.
And that leaves us with this one last really powerful thought. The true, enduring, multi-generational value of Elvis Presley couldn't actually be realized until the exploitative structure around him was finally gone. His legacy isn't just about the music. It's a profound lesson in the true price of iconography and who ultimately gets to cash in.